Whenever a massive company gets bought out, you see all the big headlines. But sometimes the real story is what happens to the person running the show. So today, we're going to dig into the huge exit of Anywhere CEO Ryan Schneider. And trust me, it's a story packed with big strategy, even bigger decisions, and a payday that is just wow.
All right, so here's the headline. Ryan Schneider, the guy who's been CEO of the real estate giant Anywhere for the last 8 years, he's out. And this wasn't just him deciding to retire. Nope. This happened right after the company was snapped up by Compass in a massive acquisition.
So this all went down last month, pretty much the second that huge merger deal was finalized. And it was kind of quiet at first. In fact, people first spotted it on his LinkedIn profile before the company even put out an official statement. That right there tells you this was something that had been in the works for a while.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting, right? A CEO doesn't just walk away after a buyout like this without let's call it a parting gift. So the big question is, what was his price tag?
Let's start with the cold, hard cash. We're talking about a severance package that, according to the official SEC filings, is estimated to be around $17.7 million. A cool 17.7 mil. But, and you're going to want to hear this, that's actually the smaller part of the payout.
Yeah, the really staggering number, that comes from his stock, his equity in the company. The estimated value of all his accelerated equity awards is almost $49.1 million. And that's where the real money is made for these top execs, right? It's all in the stock.
So you do the math. You add those two numbers together and Ryan Schneider is walking away with a potential golden handshake worth nearly $67 million. Just let that sink in for a second. $67 million. That's a mind-blowing number, and it just goes to show you what the stakes are at this level of the game. Okay, a number that big obviously makes you wonder, how is that even possible? Well, it's all thanks to something called a golden parachute. Let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how this whole deal was put together. So, for anyone who hasn't heard the term, a golden parachute is basically a contract that's set up way in advance. It guarantees huge benefits for the top brass if, say, the company gets bought out and they lose their job. It's exactly what it sounds like, a very, very soft landing.
When you look at the details, his package is pretty straightforward. That cash part, it comes from taking his base salary and his target bonus and just doubling them. The stock awards all get unlocked ahead of schedule, which is where that huge number comes from. And hey, don't forget about 88 grand to cover his health insurance, just for good measure.
Now this is a super important point. He didn't get this money automatically. It was all tied to a specific clause in his contract. Basically, the payout was triggered if he was either fired without cause or if he decided to quit for what's called good reason, like if his job totally changed after the buyout. And he had a 2-year window to make that call. But to really get why he was worth this kind of exit package, we've got to look at what he actually did. So let's hit rewind and take a look at the Schneider era, his 8 years in the driver's seat back when the company was still called Realty.
Schneider first showed up in late 2017, coming over from Capital One. And his time as CEO was really all about one thing, shaking things up. He pushed hard to modernize this huge, sprawling company. He had to steer it through some massive industry storms, like those huge commission lawsuits. And of course, he was the one who oversaw the final sale to a competitor.
So what was his game plan? Well, he was doing a few things at once. He wanted to give more support to the agents on the ground, but at the same time, he was on a mission to make the whole organization leaner. And that meant selling off businesses that didn't fit, completely reorganizing operations, and making a huge push into tech. He was basically trying to turn a giant ship on a dime. But if you had to point to one single moment that defined his entire time as CEO, a moment that changed the company's future and, had a direct impact on his own paycheck, it was this massive bet he made back in 2023.
So the whole industry was getting rocked by these massive lawsuits over real estate commissions. I mean, they were challenging rules that have been around forever. And in the middle of all that chaos, Schneider made a move that, looking back now, seems brilliant. It completely changed the game for Anywhere.
What was the move? An $83.5 million settlement. Think about that. While all the other big players were digging in their heels, getting ready for a huge court battle in that famous Sitzer/Burnett case, Schneider's Anywhere decided to just settle and get out.
And the strategy was pretty genius, really. By being the first one to the settlement table, Anywhere basically sidestepped the whole mess. It was a bold play, and it meant they could focus on their business while all their competitors were stuck in this crazy, expensive, distracting legal nightmare.
And listen to how Schneider himself talked about it. He said, The world is going to change, and we want to be leaders of that change. So for him, this wasn't about giving up. No way. It was a strategic move to get ahead of the curve and lead the industry into whatever came next.
And get this, pulling off that move wasn't just good for the company. It led directly to a $5 million bonus for Schneider himself, a reward for, steering the ship safely through what was basically a hurricane. So now that the dust is settling on this massive $67 million exit, what's the final verdict? What's Schneider's legacy? And what's next for the company that he completely overhauled?
When you look back, his legacy is really all about transformation. He took this huge, kind of clunky company and whipped it into shape, making it leaner, meaner, and more focused. And maybe most important of all, he navigated a legal storm that sank some of his rivals. And in doing so, he set the company up perfectly to be acquired.
The changes he saw coming? They're still happening, rippling across the entire real estate world right now. But with Schneider out of the picture, and Anywhere absorbed into Compass, it leaves us with one big final question. The world did change, just like he said it would. The question is, who's gonna lead it now?